Hey guys, Nick from the Bad Element Show. Back again today. I'm talking making tankers. Alright, so here we have an actual original Hungarian 20 round tanker mag. And so I'm not really sure where tanker came from, other than this is a Hungarian magazine, and with the AMD 65 with its folding stock, a lot of people will say that it was made for paratroopers and tank crews. Next to it over here, you can see this is a KCI 20 round Korean magazine, and so this is a commercial magazine, and this is actual surplus. So the 20 round mags, they're shorter. I really like them for hiking, shooting from the bench, confined space like the car or even the house. I mean, 20 rounds of AK ammo gets you a long ways, and you know, they're shorter, they're lighter. I mean, they're just cool. All right, so because these 20 round magazines from Hungary, the AMD 65, because they can be a little bit more rare to find, they can sometimes be a little bit pricier, especially when they haven't been imported or discovered in a warehouse somewhere for a while. And so KCI came up with this solution of a 20 round magazine, but I'm not a huge fan of their magazines, and it's not really, you know, like they suck or anything. The metal's kind of thin. I'm not crazy about the finish, and I really just like military surplus. That said, because of the limited options of tanker mags, I like to make my own tanker mags. So you might say, well, how do you do that? Well, that's called a cut down process, where you physically cut off the bottom of the mag. So here you can see some Romanian mag. This is a grade 3 Romanian mag, so it's worn, it's used, it's beat up, and they're cheap, about 10 bucks. And I'm going to show you how to turn this magazine, another Romanian magazine, from a 30 rounder into a 20 rounder like this Hungarian. One of the things about these cut down tankers is it retains the cool look of military surplus, which I love. You know, there's millions of these magazines. I just love them. I like the worn finish. I find them really reliable in my Draco and my Wasser AKs, both Romanian. But yeah, and they make nice cut downs. It's a very sturdy, solid bottom that we are recreating, this bottom piece here that the floor plates slide on. You can see that there's these little grooves in the floor plate, and so what we're basically going to do is cut off the bottom that we don't want, and then cut, shape, and bend new lips. Floor plate lips. Interestingly enough, and I'll talk about this in another episode, you can make them out of other things like Tapco polymer or even Bakelite magazines. I know that's a lot of people frown on that, but they are awesome. They were made in Russia, and very limited quantities, and they're super expensive should you ever find one, a prototype. But I mean, there was times when Bakelite you could find them for 10 bucks, 20 bucks. Now lately it's like 30 or 40. But say if you have, you know, 50 of these, 10 of these in your little stash pile, it's cool to make one into a tanker. And this actually is from a commercial cut down Bulgarian magazine that I painted a sort of plumish, purplish, and did kind of some little practice experimenting with stippling. That's how you say it. And it wasn't really anything serious, but this is supposed to look like a Chinese black Bakelite or phenolic mag, as they're sometimes called. China made some tankers also. In fact, lots of countries made tankers, but they're very rare. I mean, it's rare to find a North Korean or a Chinese tanker. And you can make tankers out of just about anything. This is a Chinese flatback that I'm making into a tanker for a customer. So, when it comes to actually making these tankers, cut downs, so what I'll do is I'll start with a regular 30 round magazine, and I'll flip it over, and I'll look at this drain hole here. Witness hole, drain hole. I should probably know this. I mean, it seems like it would be about the right height. The magazine was full. The follower. So, I mean, give some room for the spring, and yeah, so maybe that's a witness hole, drain hole. I don't really use them as witness holes. Shows how much I know. Anyways, but for this purposes of this video, and in explaining this process, these witness holes are pretty handy for one thing, and that's to kind of give you a guide on where to cut. And sure, you can actually hold up a tanker if you already have one, whether it's a Korean or Hungarian, and you can kind of get an idea where to draw your lines. There's another way you can load the magazine up with however many rounds you want it, whether it's 10, 15, or 20, and then you can actually use a rod, a pencil, something to measure the depth of the follower, and then measure out that depth onto the outside. And that's a lot of pretty similar to how I make 1030 California and band state riveting. It's how I determine where to place my rivet, and I'll probably wind up doing a video on that later. And here is the Chicom and the Romy cut downs next to the 30. So what you can go ahead and do is you can, and I know guys, I'm one of the ideas of the Patreon is to get better gear, so I'm not giving you these crazy shots. I mean, I need a tripod or an armature of some kind to actually help me work. So imagine that right there at the bottom of that hole. That's about where your 20 round marker is. However, when you insert a magazine into an AK, one thing you need to think about is the bolt. Okay, so the loaded round and the bolt are going to contact each other when you insert it. It's going to actually depress that follower a little bit. And so you also, on the bottom of your springs, you have this little backing plate. So you have to consider that when you're cutting these tankers. Just give yourself just a little bit more room right there. So it's about another hole's width. That's pretty good. You know, you can go closer, and if you make a mistake on cutting your magazine, you can actually, let's say you only hold 19 rounds, you can go ahead and then modify a follower by measuring a little bit out and then cutting along this line. That will allow the follower to sit lower in the magazine and give you extra rounds. There's other tricks you can do, like on the top of the magazine, there's these little tabs at the top that hold the follower in place. Now, if you were to cut these off, it kind of turns your magazine into a bolt hold open magazine because it allows the follower to sit higher, just like in a Yugo and other bolt open mags, just a little bit higher. And you might have to modify this hump, the little hump on the back of the follower. You can see that. On a lot of magazines, those are actually cut flat, and it stops the bolt. And I don't remember if the Chicoms are like that. I actually have one here. So the Chicom, you can see how that's flat. So these tankers might actually hold 21 rounds if I'm cutting them the same way as a Yugo. These Chicoms are the flatbacks that they don't have that sharp spine. So they also, well, they do have those tabs. So it would probably make a good bolt hold open follower, the Chicom, because it's got that flat back on it, just the way it's manufactured. See that compared to the Romanian. What's the difference there? I definitely need a GoPro or some better gear, guys. Okay. So next, making our cut down tanker mags, you're going to want to take that line from the back here, but you're going to do it on both sides. So you're going to continue that line on both sides. And so it's good to be pretty accurate, but you don't have to be super accurate here because you're going to cut this with, I'm assuming, a Dremel cutoff wheel. And it might not be perfect. You're going to maybe have to go over that Dremel a couple times to get that nice straight edge. You can see on this magazine, I've gone in and I've cleaned up already, and I've left these flaps. And that's for your little wings that you're going to bend out, your lips for the bottom of that floor plate to slide onto in those little grooves. And so you have to remember when you're cutting this, you're going to be making a little kind of bump here. This line here is going to be your flap, so you don't want to cut this piece off, because then you'd have to, you know. You have to have something to bend out, something to bite into. So you can actually transfer that line back. Yeah, I have some ideas to make these videos a little bit better. Give you that line. So you're actually going to be cutting twice. So you're going to be cutting the bottom floor plate lips here, and then you're going to go back and then cut this back. So it's going to look like this when you're done cutting. And so the idea is on both sides of that little flap for the floor plate, these lips here, you want that line that you drew to go from all the way flat and flush from here, and then you got your flap, but then this line and this line here, they're the same. Because when you look at a regular magazine, like this, the Hungarian, it's nice and flat. And that's what we want our tankers to pretty much look like. So this is where I say, be careful using a Dremel. You want to have a breathing apparatus, eye protection, and ear protection. I'm using these heavy-duty cutoff wheels. And this is a regular old bottom line Dremel, off and on. You can go fancier, you can go off-brand. Dremel doesn't sponsor me. I burn up about 1 Dremel or 2 a year. I do so much cutting. And so it pays to have the warranties on any tool. And I think mine have factory warranties. I could probably go trade in a couple right now. And when I get some time, I'll probably... This is what a face shield looks like. I'm sure most of you know that or have goggles. But I want to tell you that I was cutting with goggles one time, and I got sent to the hospital. The eye specialist, I had to go to the optometrist, I believe that's right, and he had to drill with his own little Dremel a rusting piece of metal out of where my iris and cornea meets. And I have a scar now, and so at nighttime I see kind of a little glare, a rainbow ring around lights, because they had to drill out a piece of metal out of my eye. And that's because it went under my little goggles. This is a disclaimer that this is all for educational use only. In fact, if you want to copy my methods and do it commercially, you can license these methods from me. This is just, you know, for educational use only. This is an informative tutorial. So anything you do is at your own risk. I mean, it's like, you know, I could tell you advice on the stock market, and then if you lose all your money, it's not my fault. So if you have to go to the hospital and they have to drill out your eye, that's your fault. Okay, so we've got our magazine marked. What you want to do is take the guts out of your magazine. So you've measured your tanker line. You've given yourself a little bit extra, right? Because we have to bend out these flaps for the floor plate lips. So you can see on this disassembled magazine, got those nice little lips. We take these lips for granted, but that's what holds the magazine together, holds the floor plate on. With the spring plate, the base of the spring, it has that little nipple that fits through this hole, and that's what stops it from moving back and forth. Okay, and so we have to remake those lips. So we're cutting that piece off, so we have to make new ones. Alright, so you see how I started cutting right there on the spine? And I did both sides. All right. So as you can see, I've cut a line here and through the other side too. See here and here. And so we're actually going to be cutting here again on that top line. That's going to be the bottom of the magazine. So this piece is going to cut off. And sorry, what I was saying is we're going to be cutting off this back piece. And so this line is the floor plate lip line. So we're just going to cut all the way down the bottom line to the front. Okay, here we go. All right. So one thing I like to do is have a nice long new cutoff wheel as I go forward. So maybe you don't have any experience with the Dremel. Maybe you do, maybe you don't, but these cutoff wheels are just secured by a little screw. It goes into a piece that's called a mandrel. Just give it a nice little snug tighten. Try not to drop them and break them. You definitely need eye protection and something to protect your lungs. This probably won't do the trick. I've worked inside fuel tanks and had to wear respirators. I'm a firefighter. I have to wear scuba gear, basically, you know, SCBAs. Yeah, you probably want to get a decent respirator. This is what I'm using right now. It's what I have today. It's a bandana, just like a cowboy. See that? My Dremel wheel broke. It's probably because I got a too high of an angle, but trust me, you don't want that little chip of stuff flying off and hitting you in the face. Not only that, but you probably saw all the sparks. You know, all those things can screw your eye up real good. You get a piece of metal in your eye and it's gonna hurt. But even if it doesn't hurt, it can rust into your eye and it can lead to healing problems. Not good. Okay. Okay, so I just made my cut all the way back to the front. And you can see I'm pretty close to my lines. Here's my bottom line I drew right above the cut of the line. And so I want to make this cut on the back maybe just a little bit more straight. And so it maybe just needs like a little pass. And I'm going to make this back line here, this cut here, connect to this cut here. All right. So there you have it. The first cut. You separated your magazine. You can get one of your tankers. Where's my tanker? See? It's a little bit longer right now. That's because we have the floor plate lips part to make. That's the next cut we're going to do. You can see it's the line is just below that witness hole. About another length in the diameter of that, or would it be radius? I don't know. Yeah, it's right there. See? Cut that, but only about so far right up to here. See that? My line I want to make them right about here. There's that first rib. Let's see in one of my other magazines that I already cut. You can see that right there. I'm going to leave it. You can see that right there. I'm going to leave this nice little piece to give you your lips, because we're actually going to bend these out and then clean them up some more until the floor plate fits on. Alright, so here we go. Alright, so again, we're going to be cutting. I'm going to do 2 cuts on the back. Now this cut is a little bit more important. You want to make this cut nice and even on both sides of the spine here, because that's going to be the bottom of your magazine. Here we go. Alright, so I've made my cut. And you can see I've got some space between the bottom and that witness hole. I probably need to go a little bit farther in on the sides, just a little bit. So here we go. Okay. Now, cutting up and down, we're going to cut that little back piece off, like Free Willy. See? We're going to cut the back off to where? There we go. Got this little edge here. This little edge. Dot, dot. So we're just going to go in like this on both sides. There we go. A little bit hot. So, we're getting there. You can do this step now or later, but regular magazines, where's a regular magazine? Okay, on my Hungarian you can see the spine. It's cut at a slight angle here. This one, you can leave these flat if you want to, the spine, but I say just give it a nice little angle. You can round those sharp edges a little bit smoother with the Dremel, but you're going to want to go in with a file at the end and file all the edges so they don't cut you like, you know, a torn tin can. Alright, now we're going to do the front cuts. Front cuts, what I mean is the piece around the front that forms the rest of the floor plate lips. So on this one, it's already cut. This one, it's not. We're going to have to cut right again. There's that, from the front, there's that first rib. We're just going to slice into it and then make a nice straight cut on the front here that's in line with this cut. So we want this whole line to be smooth here. So whatever you've drawn before, that's cool. You just want to make sure that it's either still good or else redraw your lines if you need them, because you want this line here. Yeah, it looks like mine's a little bit too high there. And so cut here and here on the front. Alright, let's go. Alright, got this front cut started on both sides. And what you want to do is cut one side again, just like we did the back. You want to cut one side all the way around to the front till we get to the side. And then you want to make sure that the rest of the lines line up so the sides are even in the front. Alright, there we have it. Got the bottom cut. We've got our lips for our floor plates. Alright, next thing to do is make sure that your bottoms are all nice and straight. And see, you can see on this one how it's not quite straight on the inside. By taking your eye I'm just looking down. Is this line straight? Not really. You want to get a nice new cutoff wheel, make that smooth to where the front and back lines on both sides of that feed lip are nice and even. That way whenever we have our lips, you know, these floor plates are going to slide right on and be nice and flush. Okay. Oh, also, what you'll need to do is you'll need to go in and clean up the edges with a file or a Dremel. You can see where it's all torn and kind of ragged. Yeah, it's going to cut you. You want that nice and smooth, and you can finish it off with the file. So you can see I've already gone back in and just kind of cleaned up the edges like so. Okay. Okay, it kind of takes a steady hand, but you'll get used to it. You want to clean up everything, except really you don't have to do the inside of these lips yet, because we'll probably cut those flush anyways on the next step. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and make this one nice and straight on the front, and so it's all even, and then we'll go to the next step.